Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for August 28th through September 3rd. This week I read one book, I watched 6 shows, I watched 2 movies, and I listened to 2 books. Longtime fans of the channel know exactly where I am. I am in my parents' basement and there's currently something haunting one of the light bulbs. So we'll find out if that's going to go out at any point in this video because it's definitely thinking that it wants to. I'm visiting my parents again because tomorrow is my mother's 60th birthday, so if you would like to leave her any happy birthday messages, please do that down below, and she sometimes watches my videos, so either she'll see them or I will tell her about them. The book I read with my eyeballs this week is Lord of the Fly Fest. This just came out, I believe, on the 30th, and I read this as an arc. This book is very much a mixture of Lord of the Flies, which is a book that I have read before and didn't particularly like. I had to read it for school, and then I read it again for another challenge where you read a book that you know you're not gonna like or something like that. And it's one of those classics that you're taught in school that I'm like, why are we taught this in school? So it's a mixture between that and what happened at Fyre Festival, which is something I had heard of before, but now that I've read this book, I definitely need to watch the documentary. Our main character is Raffi, and she is about to go to Fly Fest, which is this very hyped up music festival on an island in the middle of absolutely nowhere where there's supposed to be villas and supermodels and yachts, and she is there on a very cheap ticket, like the cheapest ticket you could get because she can't really afford the big lifestyle of the people that go to this. However, she runs a podcast called Musical Mysteries and she is going to the music festival with the sole intention of running into one of the artists that's meant to be playing and trying to get an interview with him because she is convinced that he killed his girlfriend and then used her disappearance as the way to launch his career. However, when she arrives, everyone is kind of milling about, looking angry. Nobody seems to be staff on the island. They can't see any of the villas. They don't even see any porta potties. There's no food, there's no drinks, there's no supermodels, there's no yachts. So what is going on and how do we get off the island? This one was a lot of fun. It poked a lot of fun at entitled people and the way that they talk, and that was really hilarious because obviously you're going through a character who is less entitled. Obviously she is a little bit entitled in her own way, which you'll see throughout the book, but it was fun for me to read this and wonder how much of it was taken directly from the Fyre Festival situation. So again, I need to watch that documentary. Situations in this book were taken to ridiculous extremes, so if you want something that is kind of like Lord of the Flies but way better, read this one. Cue somebody writing an angry comment down below about how I just don't appreciate William Golding. On to the shows we watched this week. We watched the last 3 episodes of the 3rd season of Westworld. So again, being the 3rd season in a weirdly complex sci-fi show, there's not much I can tell you other than I have ultimately kind of forgotten what happened. It's gotten to the point where I don't really understand the motives of some of the characters. Not that I'm not enjoying it, and not that I couldn't probably figure it out if I watched some recaps, but I'm looking forward to seeing how it continues into the 4th season. We also watched a few more episodes of the 2nd season of The Great North. I don't think we quite finished it. There might be 1 episode left or something like that, but I haven't been keeping track of how many episodes we've been watching. We just kind of toss it on when we want to. I'm still firmly of the belief that Beef Tobin is one of the best TV dads you will ever find. And this family continues to be super heartwarming. However, this is the week that I realized that the person that voices Judy is also the person that plays Mona Lisa Saberstein on Parks and Rec, so that was fun to realize. Also, Guy Fieri actually played his own voice, but it didn't sound like him for half of his lines, which was a little bit weird. But yeah, I had to look it up and I was like, okay, it was actually him, because there were a couple lines where like, oh yeah, that's 100% his voice. I've heard it many times on the Food Network. And then there's some other times where it didn't quite sound like him. So take that as you will. Even though I haven't started the omnibus and I really want to read it all before I watch the show, we did watch the 1st episode of The Sandman. Mostly just because my roommate wanted to watch it and I was like, you know what, there's no harm in watching the 1st episode before I reread the comics, because I did read the comics, I want to say 15 to 20 years ago, but I didn't read all of them, so I wanted to go back and read them before. But you know what? The show is big and new, and I had fun seeing that Tywin Lannister is just the same person in this that he was in Game of Thrones. I also really know nothing about the casting of this show other than the woman that plays Brienne of Tarth is in it at some point. I don't know which character she plays. Hello, haunted light bulb, please stop doing that. So the whole time they weren't showing us Dream's face clearly enough for me to see if it was somebody I knew. It was kind of annoying to me because I was like, who is this? Reveal yourself to me. And then it was somebody I don't think I've ever seen this person before, or if I have, I just don't recognize him. I was very surprised that he didn't just use his cheekbones to cut that glass though, because they could. Obviously, the last 3 shows I watched were all some iteration of Drag Race. First, we have Canada's Drag Race, and this week's episode was the Masquerade Ball. That means they have 2 looks that they have pre-prepared for various categories. Then for the last one, they had to make their own outfit with a set amount of time based on a masquerade mask they were given. This challenge was very fun. Some of the outfits were absolutely gorgeous. I am heartbroken at who went home, and I'm also a little bit heartbroken about who won because I wish that person wasn't doing so well, because I will be just not happy if that queen wins because she's very annoying. As for Secret Celebrity Drag Race, this week was duets. So what happened was these 6 remaining queens were each paired up with a Drag Race legend and they had to do a duet song, and that was a lot of fun. It's fun to see how they work with other people. It's fun to see the kind of things that they choose to do, from costuming to makeup to the attitude they're trying to present to what kind of challenges they're trying to give themselves. And I really enjoyed who won because I've been rooting for this person. It was also interesting to see who went home because from the beginning, my best friend thought I could be this person. And then we thought, no, there can't be 2 people from Glee on this season, right? Maybe there can, maybe there can't. Oh, you have to watch the show. As for Drag Race Down Under, the maxi challenge for this week was to film adverts for your hometown. So basically travel videos showing off your hometown. And if it were me, I would try to do something much more earnest about how I really like my hometown. You don't have to actually like your hometown. Some people didn't, and they made that clear in their adverts, and that is kind of fun. But just from a branding challenge, because this wasn't given to them as a comedy challenge, I would try to do something really earnest about the actual reasons you would want to go to these locations. That's just me. I was very happy with who ended up staying after the lip sync. That lip sync was one for the books, absolutely, but I believe this is the stronger queen, so I am looking forward to seeing how this plays out. One of the movies we watched this week, the first one being a definite rewatch, it is the second in the Cornetto trilogy, and that's Hot Fuzz. This is something we watch probably once or twice a year just because it is hilarious and we're just big fans, and when we start quoting it too often, it's got to go on the TV. If you've never heard of this one, Simon Pegg plays a police officer in London, and he's got an arrest rate 400 times higher than anybody else. He's won all these different accomplishments, and he's basically brought in by his boss, who is like, guess what? You're getting a promotion, but you have to go to this very small town called Sanford, and we're not letting you stay in London because you make us look bad. So he ends up being this sergeant in this very small town that has won Village of the Year countless times over the past few years, and you know, nothing really ever happens there. Maybe a slight amount of vandalism every once in a while, but that's about it. But then people start dying in accidents that he doesn't think are accidents. But is that just because he's from the big city, or is that because there's a killer on the loose? This movie is fun and hokey, and it's really fun to see background characters that were also background characters in Shaun of the Dead. I love seeing crossover like that, and it's just something that we watch all the time. It is my second favorite of the Cornetto trilogy. I like them in the order that they were released. The other movie we watched I had never seen before, and it is called Me Time. It is a buddy movie between Kevin Hart and Marky Mark, or Mark Wahlberg. There we go. I can never get to his name until I call him Marky Mark, and then it pops in there. Essentially, Kevin Hart is a stay-at-home dad. His wife is a very powerful architect, and she has this client that he is pretty sure is trying to steal her away from him, so there's some tension there. And basically, she is like, you know what, I will take the kids over spring break so you can have a break, because you never get a break, and then I get some quality mom time. And everything goes to shit. Everything goes to shit real hard, and a lot of it is very, very funny. Occasionally cringy, because there's always going to be something in these types of movies that you're just like, oh, that was a step too far. But for the most part, these jokes landed for me. There were even parts where some of the parenting was very funny, and some of the situations that he had to start talking about were really, really funny, and he was definitely trying to be a really good dad, and that's just really nice to see. On the books I listened to this week, the first one being Portrait of a Scotsman. This is the third in Evie Dunmore's historical fiction series that I really enjoy. I think it's called The League of Extraordinary Women. I should probably look it up because I keep talking about it without looking it up first. In this one, Hattie, who is one of the women in the feminist organization we are introduced to in the first book, wants to go see some art, has kind of thrown off her handler so she can just go and do these things that she wants to do by herself, and that gets her into somewhat of a situation. I really enjoy that the hero in this is somebody we had met in a previous book in the series, and I enjoyed learning the little bits of history that we did learn through this series. I really like that about this series. It gives us some actual historical context for the time frame and what things were like and how people were trying to change it and how they could have changed other things as well, and the series is just really fun. I very much enjoy it. I also very much enjoyed that we got a little bit of disability rep in this because our main character, unbeknownst to us, I believe up until this point, it might have been mentioned in the other books, but if it did, I missed it. She has some learning difficulties, so she can't do maths. I'm not British, but I called it maths. Cool. I used to live over there for a while, so it bled in there. It's weird that when I know a character is British, I will use the British term. That's just weird. Anyway, she's not great with numbers and she's not great with writing, so she has some form of intellectual disability, but people of this time frame just think that she's unintelligent because of course they do. All of that actually comes up in a very interesting way towards the end, so I enjoyed seeing that. I enjoyed having this be one of her characteristics, and I generally enjoyed how this went because this was not a straightforward love story, and I love when there's a little bit of complication and people have to actually realize each other are people and act accordingly. It's wonderful. The other audiobook I listened to this week I just finished last night, and that's Burn Down, Rise Up. This book follows a high schooler who lives in the Bronx, and for the past little while, people have been disappearing. At the very beginning of the book, one of these people happens to be the cousin of the girl that our main character has a crush on but has never done anything about. They also used to be really good friends, have kind of drifted apart, but her best friend also has a crush on this girl, and he doesn't know that she also has a crush on her, so that's something that's definitely going to come up later in the text. But they basically band together to try to figure out, one, what happened to that cousin, and two, what happened to our protagonist's mom, who is a nurse at the hospital who was actually infected by the cousin with something that has put her into a coma. This was really interesting because what these characters ended up having to do was basically do a challenge from a creepypasta, and that's only a term that came into my knowledge pretty recently from watching true crime videos, and having one of the theories about a true crime be something to do with a creepypasta. And if you're wondering, that one involves the elevator game, which I'm not going to explain. That's not what this video is for. But when it comes to this book, the creepypasta has something to do with going into the underground system in your city, doing very certain rules, and the challenge is basically to last for just over an hour doing the very certain rules. If you don't do the rules, something bad will happen, and it turns out that this is actually true. I'm not going to tell you more than that, other than I really enjoyed seeing how this played out and how people had to go in and out of what ended up being called the Echo. And it was fascinating to think about a world where every underground system has something like this. And on top of that, it taught some very important history of the area. History I happen to know a little bit about already, but history that is very important nonetheless. And given obviously the target audience for this is younger than me, and probably more so the people that live in that area, it makes sense to let them know about these things from their past. It's very windy all of a sudden. Can I film my outro, please? That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. Also, remember to tell my mom happy birthday, because that would be very nice of you as well. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!